Hey everyone, I'm Armor Gaming. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to Monster Analysis. Up for analysis today is Rador. Rador, also known as the Biker of the Apocalypse, was a troublemaker when he was alive and is a troublemaker now that he's only fire and bones. Keep him away from your nature monsters if you don't want them wiped out. And that description doesn't only apply to nature monsters, that applies to all monsters of any element. This monster is probably the most powerful monster to ever be released. Here we have him as a child, as a teen, as an adult. Let's get straight into his stats. Rador has a power of 3,850, which is the highest power in the whole entire game. This is actually almost 200 points higher than the previous highest monster, which was the VIP monster Kai the Eradicator. As you can see here, we have Kai the Eradicator with a power of 3,663, and then we have Rador 3,850, the strongest monster in Monster Legends. And I gotta say, Social Point, it's kind of weird they're releasing a monster who's a lot stronger than a VIP monster. But anyways, he has a life of 29,255, which if you actually notice is the same as Kai the Eradicator. And in fact, this life, only talking about fire legendary monsters, it makes them tied for 3rd place. So the great thing about having this life is that it's pretty tanky, and we're so used to seeing monsters that have a power of 3,575 have a low life of 22,000, so the fact that this monster has the highest power in the game, and has a pretty high tanky life, we can say that's really good so far. And lastly, his speed is 3,388, which is actually on the low end. As of the time I'm recording this video, there are 17 fire legendary monsters, and this puts him in 9th place. However, that doesn't necessarily matter, because monsters that are attackers, which this monster is, it doesn't really matter what their speed is. Typically the way the game works is that you pair up an attacker with a monster that can deny the enemies from attacking. So you pair him up with someone like Timerion, someone like General Thetis, someone that has an AoE freeze skill, an AoE stun skill, and essentially you stop the enemy from attacking you, and then you let your attacker take care of the rest. So even though he's not the fastest monster in the game, I would say that doesn't really matter. Overall, his stats are really good. An incredible power, a nice tanky life, and a sufficient enough speed. And of course he is a fire monster, therefore his weakness is water, and his trait is immune to burning. Now immune to burning is a trait that almost all fire monsters tend to have. It would have been nice to see something different. It would have been nice to see something like Hardened maybe, especially considering this monster being a skeleton, being dead. In my opinion, Hardened would have really worked as a trait for this monster. However, I have no choice in the matter. Also, I'd like to comment that this monster definitely has one of the best designs in the whole entire game. But now let's analyze the skills. Starting off with the default and special skills, we have Fierce Attack. Deals low physical damage to a single enemy. 25 damage, 13 stamina, no cooldown. Hot Temper. Deals low fire damage to a single enemy. 30 damage, 13 stamina, no cooldown. So there's nothing special about the default skills. Now let's look at the actual special skill. Hellbound. Deals very heavy fire damage to all enemies, may burn all targets, loses all negative status effects. So it's an AoE attacking multiple enemies, 65 damage, it gives burning, and it removes any debuffs he may have. So it's a pretty good special attack. I think I would have liked it more if instead of fire damage to all enemies, it would have been special damage to all enemies. That would have especially helped in Team Wars. But still, you can't argue with the fact that it deals 65 damage to all enemies, especially considering this monster has such a high base power. And on top of that, it does give burning, and it also removes any debuffs you may have. Overall, a really good special. So now we move down to skills group 1, and we start off with Burning Flash. Deals moderate special damage to self. What? No, but really, I think this is just a glitch, and it's supposed to target a single enemy with 40 damage, 28 stamina, and no cooldown. So, I gotta say, for a skills group 1 attack, it's pretty strong, but you have no reason to run this skill. We moved on to Blessed by Hell. Gains damage boost, 50% chance of burning target, requires cooldown. It attacks a single enemy, dealing no damage, costing 26 stamina with a 2-turn cooldown. So this is just a self-buff skill with the chance of burning one enemy target. It's certainly not a good skill, a skill you shouldn't even consider running. And last on skills group 1 we have Rador is on Fire. Deals moderate fire damage, gains precision, requires cooldown. It targets a single enemy with 35 damage, costing 31 stamina, has a 1-turn cooldown, and you get increased accuracy. So from skills group 1, you really don't need any of these skills, you can completely disregard skills group 1. So now we move down to skills group 2, and we start things off with Wicked Soul. Deals heavy special damage to a single enemy with 55 damage, costing 28 stamina and having no cooldown. And I gotta say, I really like this skill. For one, the damage is fine. 55 damage considering this monster is gonna run strength runes, considering this monster has a high power, 3,850, and the best part being that it has no cooldown, meaning if you're ever in a team wars against metal and you find yourself going up against lots of Timerions, even if the enemy Timerion goes first and does cooldowns activated, you'll still be able to use Wicked Soul, and with this incredibly strong monster, you'll still potentially be able to knock out one of the enemy monsters. So this is a skill I do recommend, but ultimately it's going to be up to you whether you want this skill or not. Another thing I should add is that it does deal special damage as opposed to fire damage. So again, in a team wars involving fire and metal, Even if Timerion does cooldowns activated, with this skill, with Wicked Soul, you might be able to take out the enemy fire monster. So if you take out the enemy attacker, they're only going to have Timerion and then whatever the rarity is, whether it be common, uncommon, rare, or epic, to try to take you down. Next we have Smoldering Bodies. Deals moderate fire damage, may burn target, requires cooldown. It attacks a single enemy with 45 damage, costing 31 stamina, having a 2-turn cooldown. So comparing this skill with Wicked Soul, you give up 10 damage, it costs more stamina, and it has a 2-turn cooldown. The upside is that this skill burns. It's also fire based, so I don't recommend using this skill at all. It deals less damage, the stamina cost is higher. Keep in mind, because this monster has a high base power, the higher the damage output is here, the more damage this monster is going to be dealing. You don't need to rely on burning to win the game, you don't need damage over time, you need a higher amount of damage output, so no reason to run Smoldering Bodies. And then we have Mad Ride. Deals moderate fire damage to all enemies, requires cooldown. It's an AoE attacking multiple enemies, it deals 45 damage, costs 37 stamina, and it has a 3-turn cooldown. So this is this monster's AoE 45 skill. You definitely have to run this skill. If you give this monster some strength runes, combined with his incredible power, combined with the damage output on the skill, this skill has the potential to knock out 3 enemy monsters in one turn. However, if you're going up against a fire monster, then you might not be able to take out the fire monster, but you can take out the other 2 monsters. So it's a really good skill. This is definitely a skill you have to run. And now we move down to skills group 3, and we start things off with Flame Slam. Deals very heavy special damage, requires cooldown. It targets a single enemy with 65 damage, costing 28 stamina, having a 1-turn cooldown. So I personally find this to be the best skill Radar has. This makes him capable of knocking out enemies without needing some sort of double damage boost. And then we also have the 28 stamina, which is insanely low, and a 1-turn cooldown, which is also pretty low. But the best part of this skill is that it deals special damage, not fire damage. So in Team Wars, when you're going up against monsters like Mega Ostium, General Darmid, because you have a special skill, because you have a strong special skill and not a fire based skill, you'll be able to knock out those monsters in one hit too. So this monster is perfect for Team Wars. So be sure to run Flame Slam. Moving on, we have Turn Them to Ashes. Deals heavy fire damage, gains double damage, requires cooldown. It targets a single enemy with 50 damage, 28 stamina, 3-turn cooldown. So the best part about this skill is not only does it deal a good amount of damage, 50, you're also getting the damage boost, which means this skill is meant to set up for your next skill, which would be an AoE. Or to be more precise, it would be your 45 damage fire-based AoE. So this skill isn't necessarily bad, however in my opinion, I don't really think you need the double damage. In fact, I'll come back to the skill, but this is a skill you may or may not want to run. It really depends on you and your preferred playing style, so I'll come back to this. Let's move on to Melting Ground. Deals low fire damage to all enemies, may burn all targets, gains position, requires cooldown. So it's an AoE targeting multiple enemies, it deals 30 damage, it costs 39 stamina, and it has a 3-turn cooldown. This is your classic AoE burn skill for fire monsters, except it has an added benefit. It gives you increased accuracy, it gives you precision, which is amazing. This also sets up for a future attack. So there's essentially 2 different routes you can do. You can do Turn Them to Ashes, give yourself a double damage boost, and then do Mad Ride, or you can do Melting Ground, deal initial 30 damage AoE, give the enemies burning, give yourself increased precision, and then when your turn comes around, you can do Mad Ride. So it depends on what kind of player are you. Do you want to go for the double damage, pretty much knocking out the enemy in 2 turns, or do you want to go a more safer route where you deal low damage to all of the enemy monsters and give yourself increased precision and then use your other AoE skill. Now keep in mind, AoE skills have an accuracy of 90, meaning if you do Turn Them to Ashes, even though you have double damage, your AoE skill could potentially miss. It won't hit all 3 of the monsters. However, if you use Melting Ground, even if you initially miss, you're still going to hit them all with Mad Ride because of that increased accuracy. Now the skills I recommend running on this monster are Flame Slam, Melting Ground, and Mad Ride. For the final skill, it'd either be a toss-up between Wicked Soul or Turn Them to Ashes, with myself leaning towards Wicked Soul. Because of this monster's high base power, I really don't feel like this monster needs that self double damage buff. I honestly feel that with high enough strength runes, all you need is Melting Ground, Mad Ride combo, and you'll be able to win. If you have really high runes, maybe if you just use Mad Ride, you'll be able to finish off all 3 of the enemy monsters. Again, maybe not the enemy fire monster. And if you're planning on using this monster for Team Wars, I really do think Wicked Soul would come in handy more often than Turn Them to Ashes. But also, Flame Slam, Wicked Soul, they are both special base skills, so if you're going up against other fire monsters, you'll have no problem taking them out. So I want to start off by saying this monster is an attacker. In fact, he's an incredible attacker. You need to make sure to pair him up with a monster that can deny the enemy from attacking. You need to pair him up with someone like Cavenfish, someone like Timerion. These are monsters that people in the Monster Legends community refer to as Deny Monsters or Immobilizers. Because although this monster is fantastic, by himself he's not that great. If he doesn't get the churn to be able to use his amazing power, he's not that great. For this monster, you should be using at least 2 strength runes. I think he has a fine enough life that he doesn't need a life rune, so for his final rune, it can be either another strength rune, It can be a speed rune or a team speed rune. And I say at least 2 strength runes because it depends on what level your runes are. If you have really high level runes, you can get away with using 2. If your runes are mediocre, you know, level 5, level 4, you probably need 3 strength runes. And with all that being said, that is going to conclude my analysis on Rador. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys thought about the analysis in the comments below. Let me know if I missed anything. Give me your guys' thoughts on this monster. And I have a question for everyone out there. Do you think this monster is worthy of being in the top 3 fire legendary monsters? If so, make sure to comment below what place you think this monster should be. Is he better than Darmith? Is he better than Mega Ostium? Is he better than Greedy Dragon? Let me know. And with all that being said, guys, thank you so much for making this to the end of the video. Also, make sure to comment below who you want me to analyze next. And make sure to have a great day or a great night. Remember to dream big and pursue your passions.